Morning. We've just come back from swimming, which is why my hair looks like I'm a drowned rat. Excellent. Chapter 47 of The Treasure Hunter's Tale. They all talked long into the evening, and by the next day the plans were settled, so all they had to do now was wait for the arrival of the rest of their brigade. Hope's schooling continued well, and she and Miss Wait-on-the-Law grew closer and closer. Hope learned so many good things that would stand her in good stead for womanhood. She kept in touch with the handful of real friends she had made from her old school, and they all said they were looking forward to her baptism. As the day got closer for her baptism, Miss Wait-on-the-Law helped Hope write out her testimony and helped her practice speaking nice and loudly and clearly. "For," said she, "you will have a large audience, and this is your chance to really testify to the King's goodness in your life." Hope smiled. She was a little nervous, but mostly excited. In the afternoon, she and her grandmother made fortifying foodstuffs for the battle ahead, as they were not sure how long it would take the men to get the ship and then overcome it, and they would need things to fuel them for the fight. They made lovely fatty herby biscuits which could be chewed rather like ship's biscuits or dipped in soup, and they made a sort of beef leather that was very salty but could be chewed for hours. Hope almost wished she could join the men, for she was very keen to be part of the rescue, but her grandmother had wisely told her a bit more of the bad treatment she had received at the hands of the pirates, and demonstrated to Hope that this was no place for a young lady. "That's just it," cried Hope. "Mother was only a young lady when she was taken, and if there is a young lady on board, don't you think she would want a female to rescue her? She might be too scared of men." "That's a good point," said her mother, who had just come in from the garden. "I've been thinking along these lines too." "Then can I go?" said Hope hopefully. "Not to fight, love, but I think we should all go and be nearby, so when the battle is over we can minister to the wounded and any women and children who are found on board." Hope clapped her hands. "Oh, thank you, Mother," she said, giving her a hug. "I do so want to be helpful to them." "Me too," said Miss Wait-on-the-Law. "Bravo, my dear, for thinking of a way that doesn't involve us directly fighting," she said, smiling at her daughter. "And me too," said Ian, who had been sitting on the front doorstep listening to the whole conversation. "And you too," said his mother, "for Freddie was your age when we escaped." That evening saw the timely arrival of Johnny and the other dragon slayers. They were quickly brought up to speed and relished the idea of fighting those brigands. "It will make a nice change from dragons," said Mr. Setfree, tapping his metal arm and smiling. "And I wager there will be less fire," chuckled Shawhope, looking at Johnny and winking. The men laughed, and the group around the kitchen table discussed the plan until the small hours. The next day saw the arrival of Taste and See That the King is Good and Serve the Lord. They too had tales to tell of their mission and were very much on board with the plan, as were Mr. Saved by Grace and Ears to Hear, who arrived at about tea time that same day. Mrs. Beloved of the King had also recruited some of the ladies she knew to be true followers of the King to help with the food and first aid and other necessities. Mrs. My Weakness is His Strength was delighted to be asked to join the band and started knitting blankets at such a rate that she had made a blanket for each person with the help of Johnny's mother, Mrs. Ernest, by the time they set off. The farmer and his wife made lovely hard cheeses with thick rinds so they would keep well even if not kept in a cold box, and the smith sharpened all the swords he could lay his hands on. The baker made a batch of sausage rolls to be eaten on the journey, as they wouldn't last for more than a day, but also supplied them with really dense fruit cakes that were simply bursting with berries, which had been soaked in tea to give them extra yumminess. "And they can last for months," he said, smiling, "but I wager they'll be gone before you even arrive at the ship." Other members of the church who were unable to join in the journey provided what they could: bandages, cups, all sorts. By the time things were ready, they needed an entire cart to carry all that had been donated. There was a sense of anticipation growing in the town as news spread of the intended venture, but people still made an effort to focus on Hope's baptism, as they knew that that, too, was something to be truly celebrated. Hope did so well reading her testimony out. She explained how it was through being bullied for being the preacher's daughter that she realised she was not actually saved. "I resented being called the preacher's daughter, as if I was also a Christian. I wrestled with that feeling in my mind because although other people thought I was one of the church people, I knew in my heart that I wasn't actually a Christian. At first, I thought this just made it unfair that I was being bullied for something that my parents were. But then, as the bullying continued, I realised that I was more scared of not being saved than being bullied. And so I asked the King to forgive me for my sinful life and to give me his Son's righteousness, which he could do because Jesus died for me on the cross to take away my sin." Hope looked up and noticed that her whole class had turned up to watch her be baptised, and her eyes filled with tears. So I can say that I honestly forgive those who bullied me for my faith, both before and after. For like Joseph from the Bible, I can truly say you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. She looked up and smiled at her class. God meant it for good. He has used you to show me my sin and to draw me to him, and he has also used you to strengthen me in my trusting of him, and so I am grateful. This last part was something she had not planned to say, but seeing her class there, she felt compelled to say it. Then she stepped down into the water and was baptized by her dear uncle Saved by Grace in the name of the king, his son Prince Emmanuel, and the officer of the king. When she came out of the water, everyone sang one of Hope's favourite hymns, which I will write out in full on the next page because it is a truly challenging and wonderful hymn. Thy way, not mine, O Lord, however dark it be, lead me by thine own hand, choose out the path for me. Smooth let it be or rough, it will be still the best. Winding or straight, it leads right onward to thy rest. I dare not choose my lot, I would not if I might. Choose thou for me, my God, so shall I walk aright. The kingdom that I seek is thine, so let the way that leads to it be thine, else I must surely stray. Take thou my cup, and it with joy or sorrow fill, as best to thee may seem. Choose thou my good or ill. Choose thou for me my friends, my sickness or my health. Choose thou my cares for me, my poverty or wealth. Not mine the choice in things great or small. Be thou my guide, my strength, my wisdom, and my all. And those who knew Hope well could tell she truly meant what she was singing, and it warmed their hearts greatly. After the service, everyone was invited back to the church building for a nice meal laid on by the women of the church, and Hope was pleased to see that her class were also heading up to the church with everyone else. She was also a little nervous, but she prayed for the strength to face them, and she also prayed that the king would help her show them his love. She was munching on a chicken pie, 100 of which were lovingly provided by the baker and his wife, when one of the girls from school came up to her. Freddie, who was also eating one of the pies, was watching from a distance, ready to jump in and rescue Hope as soon as she showed any signs of distress. But the girl simply stood by Hope and looked at her. Hope wondered whether the girl was doing this to try and intimidate her, but she noticed the girl's hands were shaking slightly. "I really do forgive you," said Hope in an earnest tone. The girl nodded and then walked away. Later, Hope was going down the hallway towards the ladies' loos when one of her main bullies came past her, and Hope felt a little afraid. But when she got into the room, she noticed the girl was trying to tidy her hair, and she was getting frustrated. Hope lent the girl her brush and then went into the cubicle. "Oh, please, Lord, let this small act of kindness challenge her and help her to come to know you," she prayed. She waited a little while, but hearing the girl was still there, she came out again to wash her hands. The girl had brushed her hair and handed the brush back to Hope, who said, "Keep it." The girl just looked at Hope in amazement. "Why are you being so nice to me, Hope? I have always been horrid to you, and you have never been anything but nice." The girl sounded bewildered rather than frustrated, and so Hope took a deep breath, in which she sent up quick help me arrow prayers. "It's because of Jesus," she said simply. "I love Jesus, and Jesus said I should love my enemies because that shows his love for them. So that is what I have tried to do." She looked at the girl. "He really does love you too," she said, and then with another deep breath, "And so do I. That's why I want you to keep the brush as a present to remind you of the love of Jesus." And with that, she hurried out of the toilets and left the girl to her thoughts. "Was everything all right in there?" asked Freddie, who was very protective over his little sister. "You look super flushed, Hope." Hope put her hand to her cheek. "Do I?" she said. "Everything is okay, Freddie, but thank you for looking out for me," she said, and gave him a hug.